and welcome to this week's lecture on West Mexico. We're traveling back in time from where we were last week in the post-classic period to the late formative period, so about 300 BC to 200 AD. This is roughly contemporary with the Monte Alban Zapotecs and Teotihuacanos. We're also traveling much further west in Mesoamerica than in previous classes, to the Jalisco and Colima regions of Mexico's Pacific coast. Here is the present-day Mexican state of Jalisco, and here is the present-day Mexican state of Colima. Here is a satellite view of this region. Two key landmarks are Lake Chapala, one of the largest lakes in Mexico, and the Volcán de Tequila, the extinct volcano of Tequila. Like the Champagne region of France, Tequila is a region in Mexico that gives its name to a famous beverage. In this map, you can see the city of Guadalajara, the volcano of Tequila, and two nearby archaeological sites we will talk about in class, Huitzilapa and Teochitlan. Here is a view of the volcano of Tequila. In the foreground are agave cactus fields for making tequila. And here is a sunrise view of the volcano. Here's another photo of Jalisco to give you a sense of the landscape. In the late formative and early classic periods, this region of West Mexico developed a distinctive form of urban architecture not found elsewhere in Mesoamerica. A central platform was surrounded by a circle of 4 or 8 other platforms. These platforms would originally have had buildings on top. Here you see an example from the site of Teochitlan. Here is a site plan of Teochitlan. As you see, a number of these architectural circles are fitted together. Here is where Teochitlan is located in red, and here's another view of the site. To the north, the late formative site of Huitzilan has the same basic architectural style. Sorry, that's Huitzilapan. A central platform is surrounded by a circle of 4 to 8 buildings. This layout, as you have guessed, is probably connected to Mesoamerican ideas about the 5 directions, or the 5 directions plus the 4 intercardinal directions: northwest, southwest, northeast, southeast. This distinctive West Mexican architectural layout is represented in late formative clay sculptures. A circle of 4 buildings surrounds a central platform. And once again, a circle of 4 buildings surrounds a central platform. In this case, a man holding a spear or a club stands on the platform wearing some kind of headdress. Circularity seems to have been of aesthetic interest in West Mexican sculpture. Another type of late formative ceramic sculpture depicts circular dances. In this example, a circle of dancers surround 2 musicians. The man in front plays maracas, the man in back plays a drum. Inside the circle of this dance are 3 dancers all wearing headdresses, perhaps of some kind of animal. The loops may be ears. Many West Mexican sculptures fill the world's art collections today, but most of these objects were looted. They were dug up and sold by looters, not archaeologists, which means that for most West Mexican art, we don't have any contextual information about where it came from or what other objects individual pieces were buried with. One exception is the site of Huitzilapa, marked in red. In 1993, archaeologists discovered 2 unlooted tombs there. Here is the site map of Huitzilapa, which we saw before, and note that it is drawn so that north is to your left at the western end of the site. Below the southern mound of an architectural circle, archaeologists discovered an unlooted shaft tomb with 2 chambers. Here is a detail of that circular complex. North is now at the top. The shaft tomb was under the southern mound, marked in red. Here is an aerial view of that mound above, and then below, in a profile drawing, you can see the top of the mound above, and then below it, centered, is the 2-chambered shaft tomb. Shaft tomb is one of your keywords for today. And here is a photo of one of these deep shafts that lead from the surface down to a tomb below. The tomb at Huitzilapa had 2 chambers. one to the north and one to the south of the shaft entrance. Each tomb contained 3 burials. Shaft tombs under houses seem to have been represented in West Mexican art. Here is the village model we looked at earlier. Note that in the platform under one of the buildings there is a cave-like space. This may be a representation of a shaft tomb. Other ceramic sculptures depict single houses. Humans are seated in the space above, living humans. As well as in the space below, only these are probably deceased humans. The humans below then would be dead family members. The humans above would be living family members. The humans below, dead family members buried under the house platform in a shaft tomb, just like the tomb found at Huitzilapa below a platform where a structure would have been built, on which a structure would have been built. As we've seen many times before in Mesoamerican and Andean art, the dead are depicted as still alive, as still part of social life. Here's another example of a ceramic house model with 2 levels. The living family members are seated above, and the dead family members seated in the chambers below. So who is buried in the Huitzilapa tomb? From skeletal analysis, archaeologists could figure out the age and sex of all 6 burials. The north chamber contained, from right to left, a male aged around 45, N1, a male aged 30 to 40, N2, and a female at least 50 years old. The southern chamber contained, from left to right, a male aged 40, S1, a female aged 30 to 40, S2, and a male aged 16 to 20, S3. The most prominent individual in the tombs was Mr. N1 in the northern tomb. He had the most grave goods. These included a pile of conch shells around his thighs. These came from both the Pacific Ocean, fairly nearby, and from the Caribbean, much farther away. There was also the remains of a spear thrower by his right hand. The tomb also contained a number of ceramic effigy figures. Here is a photo of all 3 burials in the northern tomb chamber. You can also see all of the ceramic offerings to your left and in the background. Here's Mr. N1. You can see the conch shells by his thighs, as well as the elaborate shell bracelets on both of his arms. Quite possibly, this man was an important ruler of the site of Huitzilapa. One interesting feature of these burials is that 5 of the 6 skeletons had a distinctive genetic trait, fused neck vertebrae. This means that most of the people in this tomb were related. The exception, the woman labeled N3, might have been from a different family and married into this household. Making a tomb and filling it with grave goods took a lot of effort, so this may be the group burial of members of a royal family, all related to the man labeled by archaeologists as N1. This brings us back to the visual arts. In addition to architectural scenes, another common type of West Mexican art was the ceramic effigy. This example, a man, holds a mace in one hand and a cup in the other. His ears are multiply pierced, a distinctive West Mexican fashion. A similar ceramic is in the collections of the Columbus Museum of Art. It was also common for West Mexican figural ceramics to come in male-female pairs. In this pair, the woman is on the left, wearing a long skirt and holding a cup. The man is on the right, wearing shorts and holding a mace. Both have multiply pierced ears and noses. These may have represented a noble husband and wife. The Columbus Museum of Art has one of these male-female ceramic pairs. In this pair, the shorts-wearing man is on your left, holding a ball, and the skirt-wearing woman is on your right, holding a cup. In this example, the man and woman form a single object. He holds a mace. If N1 was the most important burial in the tomb, his companions also have distinct and interesting grave goods. At N2, a man also had the remains of a spear thrower by his right hand, just as N1 did. N3, a woman had, in contrast, spindle whorls by her right hand. Spindle whorls are small ceramic discs with a hole in the center. And here's what they look like. They're used for spinning fiber into thread. A sharp stick, the spindle, is thrust into the central hole, and the two are then spun on the ground or in a spinning bowl like a top. And the motion of the spindle and the whirl help a spinner create yarn from a handful of unspun fiber. As we discussed last week at Kakashla, textiles and spinning and weaving were stereotypically gender female throughout Mesoamerica. Symbolically speaking, it makes sense for male N2 to hold a spear thrower in his right hand, while woman N3 held a spindle in her right hand. Centuries later, the Aztecs drew parallels between male weapons and female spinning and weaving tools. This is a page from the post-classic Central Mexican Codex Cospi. It was painted by neighbors of the Aztecs. It shows a goddess wearing a triangular Quechquemeedle cape. Remember Quechquemeedles from Kakashla. She holds a round shield in front. She holds her arm in back with two fingers extended, as if holding a spear thrower. But she is not holding a spear thrower. She is holding a spindle and spindle whirl, wrapped in spun thread. So there's a parallel between spear throwers and spears and spindles and spindle whirls being created by this image. So those are the two men and one woman buried in the northern chamber. Men and women, the men were buried with gender male spear throwers, and the woman was buried with gender female spindle whirl. Gender-specific grave goods were also found in the southern tomb. Individual S2, a woman, was buried on top of two stone metates. This was another of your key terms for today. The mano and metate is a two-part kitchen implement made out of stone. The stone mano is like a rolling pin, and it is rolled back and forth on top of the stone metate below. It is usually, or the set of items is usually used to grind corn into dough for making tamales or tortillas. But in this photo, it was used to grind cochineal, a fabric dye. Like spinning and weaving, cooking was gender female in Mesoamerica, so it's appropriate that the woman S2 was buried on two metates. Here we are back in the southern chamber. Under S1, a male, archaeologists found the remains of reed matting. This was probably used to wrap the body like a shroud before burial. Another thing that archaeologists discovered about the bodies in these tombs is that although the male N1 in the northern chamber was buried directly in the tomb, all of the other individuals had been buried elsewhere before being moved into these tomb chambers. Wrapping bodies in reed mats could have helped with post-mortem transfers of bodies. If the tomb was made for N1, a ruler, then when he died, family members who had died before him were all gathered together to be with him in his fancy tomb after death. Some West Mexican ceramic models seem to show funeral rituals. In this scene, a man, perhaps a ruler, is seated in a building. He is drinking from a cup. His pet dog sits by his side. They are both guarded by warriors holding round shields and maces. Lying flat on his back on the ground is another man, presumed to be dead. He's hard to see, but the arrow points at the tip of his nose. Three other men, perhaps mourners, complete the scene. They are also drinking, perhaps toasting the dead man. This ceramic model was in a private collection, and its current location is unknown. We only have a black and white photo of it, so it's a bit hard to interpret. There are two houses. In the center, in two lines of three, are a group of 6 pallbearers. They hold a long, wrapped bundle, interpreted as a body wrapped in a reed mat. Here is the image without lines, and with lines again. So perhaps scenes like the one that accompanied the burial of all 6 people in the Huitzilapa tomb are what we just saw in ceramic version. So imagine those as being the funeral rites that led to all of these people being brought together in death in a single tomb after the death of individual N1. Let's return to the northern chamber. A series of ceramic figures was buried there, including one man holding a ball. Here's an excavation photo of him, and here's a cleaned up image. He's probably a ball player, and in fact a number of similar ceramic ball players are known from West Mexican art. Here's one example. And remember that the man in the pair we saw earlier also holds a ball. West Mexican artists also made ceramic ball game scenes. This one is broken on one end, but you can see 5 figures on the playing field, a large ball, and spectators on 3 sides. Here's another example with a deeper playing court, and another one. Not surprisingly, ball courts have also been found at West Mexican archaeological sites, actual architectural ball courts. The one at Huitzilapa, where the tomb we were talking about was located, was on the eastern end of the site, and the one at Teochitlan formed an alley between 3 circular architectural complexes. The Mesoamerican ball game was often linked to warriors and sacrifice. West Mexican effigy figures also show warriors. This man holds a spear and wears armor of leather or reeds. Here are 2 more warriors holding spears. As with the moche in the Andes, West Mexicans also created effigy ceramic vessels of bound captives. Here is another example. And the West Mexicans also practiced head hunting. This man wears 2 trophy heads, and he's about to take a drink from a bowl. Here's a ceramic jar with trophy head decorations. A similar jar is in the Columbus Museum of Art. Returning to our tomb, in addition to ceramic effigies, archaeologists also found lots of ceramic bowls, servingware. These would have been filled with food offerings for the dead. If we return again to one of the house models we looked at earlier, the practice of feeding the dead is also represented. Plates of food are placed between the people in the tomb chamber below. Earlier this semester, we saw how both the Nazca and the Moche in the Andes created effigy vessels shaped like plants and animals. So did the West Mexicans. Many of these effigies depict food sources. This one shows a crayfish. This one shows a turtle. Here is a jar with tasty shrimp tails running around it. And this one has 4 crabs. This jar also depicts edibles, roasted heart of agave slices. As I mentioned earlier, tequila is the name of a region in West Mexico where the beverage tequila is made. If pulque, which we've talked about before in class, is fermented agave sap, like a beer, then tequila is distilled agave sap, like a whiskey. Workers cut the spines, the leaves, off of the agave plant to reveal the sap-filled heart. It's sort of like the soft heart of an artichoke. Here are a series of de-leaved agave hearts waiting to go to the distillery. Here is a West Mexican effigy showing a man carrying one of these agave hearts on his back. And this brings us back to our jar. In addition to making hearts of agave into tequila, you can also roast them and eat the flesh. It's sweet and caramely, but very fibrous. And you can see a whole roasted heart here, and then slices of it chopped off. These slices of roast agave are what are depicted on that ceramic jar. Here it is again. West Mexicans also made pulque from agave sap. The distillation of tequila was invented after the Europeans arrived. This man may be using a reed straw to drink pulque from a bowl-shaped cup. Another type of West Mexican sculpture shows a hunchback holding a jar on one shoulder. This is a type. These have been interpreted as hunchbacks holding jars of pulque, and a similar ceramic is in the Columbus Museum of Art. Perhaps the most famous type of West Mexican ceramic is shaped like a hairless dog, a specific breed of Mexican canine. Here is an actual hairless dog puppy. Compare and contrast. Puppy still needs to grow into his skin. Another example. And the actual beasts. Why did West Mexicans make so many effigy vessels of dogs? Well, hairless dogs are used as a food source in some parts of Mexico, but a ceramic like this suggests dogs may have had a different meaning. It is a dog wearing a human mask. Centuries later, the Aztecs believed that, after death, dogs could help human souls successfully travel to the land of the dead, a journey filled with hazards. We've looked at this house model a number of times already. The arrow here is pointing to a small ceramic dog hanging out with the dead ancestors below. This may connect to the idea of dogs as guides in the underworld. At the same time, this ceramic also points to the idea of human-animal transformation. Other parallel images can be found in other West Mexican ceramics. Here's a man wearing a shark mask. As with the formative Olmecs, it has been argued that these transforming figures may relate to shamans. Shamans are religious experts who can often transform into animals and travel to the different levels of the cosmos, intervening on behalf of humans with powerful non-human forces, such as in fighting diseases. This ceramic shows a shark being swallowing a human. In tales of shamanic initiation from throughout the Americas and Asia, a new shaman is often swallowed up by fierce ocean-dwelling creatures. Also possibly connected to shamanism are West Mexican figures of men with a single horn tied to their foreheads. Here's another example. Throughout the Americas and Asia, the wearing of horned headdresses is also a trait of shamans. One type of shaman among the Hopi in the southwest United States was called the one horn. So far I've talked about how West Mexican ceramics connect to architecture, social organization, sport and warfare, foods, and beliefs. I want to end by talking about possible evidence for oceanic connections between West Mexico and South America. The first point of evidence is the use of copper-arsenic alloys. In the early Classic period, people in West Mexico began practicing a kind of metal smelting, very similar to that being practiced in Ecuador. From West Mexico, the art of metalworking spread to the rest of Mesoamerica. One archaeologist who has studied metals from both West Mexico and Ecuador says the techniques are too similar to be accidental. There must have been contact. The shaft tomb is an architectural form unique in Mesoamerica, but it can also be found in Ecuador and Colombia, as you see here. This may be another piece of evidence for connections, this architectural form. Some costume elements seem to be shared between Ecuador and West Mexico, such as the wearing of tusk necklaces by leaders. An example from Ecuador is on the left, and from West Mexico is on the right. And the tusks might be from whales or from wild boars, so teeth from whales or wild boars. Finally, two closely related species of jay are found in both Mexico and Ecuador, and nowhere in between. Perhaps human trade explains why these related birds are found in both places. We don't yet have any irrefutable evidence of these contacts. Archaeologists have not found Andean ceramics in West Mexico, for example. But since long-distance connections between pre-Hispanic societies is one of the themes in the first half of this course, I wanted to mention the possibility here. West Mexican ceramics became very fashionable in the middle years of the 20th century. They are certainly the most common type of Mesoamerican ceramics that you will find in museums in the United States. Mexican artist Frida Kahlo and her sometime husband Diego Rivera collected them and depicted them in their paintings. This is Kahlo's self-portrait on the border between Mexico and the United States from 1932, with a West Mexican ceramic to your left. Here is Diego Rivera's Tarascan Civilization fresco from a decade later, 1942. On your right, a native leader wears a conical headdress, holds a mace, and consults a codex. He's clearly based on West Mexican effigies such as this one. In addition to the conical headdress and weapon, both figures have multiply pierced ears. The mid-20th century fashion for West Mexican ceramics helps explain why one warrior figure plays a key role in the plot of Alfred Hitchcock's 1959 thriller, North by Northwest. And here we see another film still showing the ceramic from North by Northwest. Hitchcock was a British-born director who made a number of major movies in Hollywood. His most legendary decade spans the mid-1950s to the mid-1960s. 1954, Rear Window, 1958, Vertigo, 1959, North by Northwest, 1960, Psycho, 1963, The Birds. Since North by Northwest is a classic film everyone should see, and since it connects to the history of collecting West Mexican art, your other task for this week is to watch the film. There will be a question about it on the midterm. A link to OSU's online streaming copy is listed here. I've also emailed the link to everyone. I hope you enjoy watching.